Western Spring Television. Ours it is.
Good evening and welcome to Spring Global on Western Spring Television. Now the headlines. Iran conducts first execution of protesters convicted over recent anti-government unrest. And Russia frees United States basketball star in swap with armed dealer Victor Bout. Uganda receives 1,200 experimental vaccine doses to combat Sudan strain of Ebola virus. My name is Tunde Idowu. We'll start from Iran. Iran has announced the first execution of a protester convicted over the recent anti-government unrest. State media reported that Mohsen Shekari was hanged this morning after being found guilty by a revolutionary court of enmity against God. He was accused of being a rioter who blocked a main road in Tehran on the 25th of September and wounded a member of the paramilitary Basij force with a knife. An activist said he was convicted after a show trial without any due process. Iran's judiciary has so far announced that 11 people have been sentenced to death in connection with the protest. The unrest that began in mid-September after the death in custody of Masha Amini, a 22-year-old woman who was detained by morality police for allegedly wearing her hijab improperly. The women-led protests have spread to 160 cities in all 31 of the country's provinces and are seen as one of the most serious challenges to the Islamic Republic since the 1979 revolution. And in South America, a Guatemalan court has sentenced former President Otto Perez to 16 years in prison, finding him guilty of leading a massive custom fraud scheme while in office. Judge Ima Valdez found Perez, who was forced to resign in 2015, guilty of racketeering and fraud targeting the customs system. Perez was sentenced to 8 years on each count. His former vice president, Roxana Baldetti, received the same sentence. In the meantime, Peru's ousted President Pedro Castillo has been detained by police and accused of rebellion and conspiracy to break the constitutional order. He was reportedly detained on his way to the Mexican embassy in Lima after he tried to dissolve parliament. Images run by TV outlets showed the 53-year-old at police premises and cooperating with prosecutors. He has reportedly been moved to a police-run prison, but Mexico says it is willing to offer him asylum. The country's foreign minister, Marcelo Ebrard, said he was very concerned that Mr. Castillo's detention, but said the former president had yet to make a formal request for asylum or aid from his government. Just hours after impeaching Mr. Castillo, Congress swore in his vice president, Dina Boluarte, as the new president. Ms. Boluarte is the first woman to lead Peru, and she said she will govern until July 2026, which is when Mr. Castillo's term will have come to an end. The United States and Russia have exchanged jailed U.S. basketball star Brittany Griner for notorious arms dealer Victor Bout, who was held in an American prison for 12 years. Bout said the swap was approved by President Joe Biden in recent days. Griner was arrested at a Moscow airport in February for possessing cannabis oil and last month sent to a penal colony. President Biden said he had spoken to Griner, adding that she was safe and was on her way home. Russia's foreign ministry confirmed the swap, and Russian media reported that it had taken place in Abu Dhabi.
Moments ago, standing together with her wife Sherelle in the Oval Office, I spoke with Brittany Griner. She's safe, she's on a plane, she's on her way home.
German Chancellor Olaf Scholz says the risk of nuclear weapons being used in the Ukraine conflict has lessened for the time being. On Wednesday, Russia's Vladimir Putin suggested that Moscow will only use nuclear weapons in retaliation. But the U.S. denounced the comments as loose talk. In an interview today, Mr. Scholz said his recent visit to China had contributed to putting a stop to the threat of nuclear escalation. The German Chancellor said he and Chinese President Xi Jinping were in agreement that nuclear weapons must not be used and that the G20 countries had reaffirmed this position shortly afterwards. And coming to Africa, a United Nations investigation has found that at least 131 people were killed at the end of November in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo at the hands of the M23 rebel group. It says investigations have confirmed the death of the civilians in two villages, Kishishi and Bambo, in the Rutshuru district of North Kivu province. The UN says the victims were executed in what appears to be a reprisal to the current government offensive. The M23 rebels, who have captured several towns near the borders of Rwanda and Uganda this year, have denied they are attacking civilians. Elsewhere, Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman has received China's President Xi Jinping in Riyadh as part of a visit expected to bolster political and economic ties. Mr. Xi was greeted by MBS at Yamaha Palace, where the de facto ruler of the world's biggest oil exporter is expected to sign around $30 billion in agreements, according to Saudi state media. The two leaders stood side by side as a brass band played the national anthem, then chatted as they walked into the palace, which is the king's official residence and seat of the royal court. Arab leaders also began to converge on the Saudi capital ahead of a summit with Mr. Xi, who will hold separate talks with the six-member Gulf Cooperation Council before leaving tomorrow. One woman has died after heavy overnight rain flooded Portugal's capital, Lisbon. The country's civil protection agencies said the 55-year-old was killed after being trapped by water in her basement in Algiers, but her husband was rescued. Intense rainfall washed away cars and flooded street buildings and public transport stations, blocking some metro lines. Authorities shut down a number of roads and tunnels around the city. Portugal's Civil Protection Authority has called on citizens not to leave their homes and to avoid low-level areas. You're watching Spring Global on Western Spring Television. We will be right back after the break.
Sports is a culture on its own. It has its own language, its own people, with their own way of life. The world of sports is never void of actions, stories, dramas, and scandals. I guess you need a sports show that can walk the walk and talk the talk.
On this show, we answer all your sporting questions. The whens, the whys, the wheres, and even the what ifs. Sports Spring is that show that will give you that new lease of life you've been looking for in sport journalism. Join me, Joseph Atewe,
And your sports Amazon, Nengi Enes.
on this station, Western Spring Television, channel 190, only on Star Times.
Let's talk sports. Let's speak the most universal language of the world.
How would you like a TV station that breaks the barriers of your TV screen? A TV station that brings infotainment to your forefront, breaking the conceptual fourth wall. Giving you television that is personal to you and your everyday life. Indigenous broadcasting for every man, cutting across the shackles of age, class, and language. With the best of equipment in digitized broadcasting. At Western Spring Television, your television experience has never been this magical.
We'll bring you the best in news and programs, breaking news to you as it drops from where it drops.
Talk shows that keep you glued to your seats, sports programs not void of in-depth analysis, entertainment programs cutting across all ages, political analysis with all its accompanying controversies, social responsibility because we care. Western Nigeria gave us our first feel of television. Western Spring Television is taking us to the next level.
You're welcome back, and you're still watching Spring Global on Western Spring Television. In more news, Uganda has received 1,200 experimental vaccine doses designed to work against the Sudan strain of the Ebola virus that will be used in scientific trials. The country has confirmed 142 cases of the Sudan strain, with 56 deaths since it announced an outbreak of Ebola in September. Currently, there is no vaccine proven to be effective against this strain of the viral hemorrhagic fever. The vaccine will be administered to people who have been in contact with those who tested positive for the virus in what is called a ring vaccination. Researchers hope to recruit at least 3,000 people aged 6 years and above to take part in the study, which will be conducted by a team of Ugandan scientists. Health Minister Dr. Jane Ruth Aseng has said the study is necessary to equip the country with all the public health tools it needs to fight similar outbreaks in future.
And today we are happy that we have the first batch, 1,200 doses from the Sabin Institute. We shall be receiving other doses from Merck and from Oxford. First of all, we are 9 days today, countdown. So it does not mean we will not get another case. Uganda is a country that always wants to be prepared and ready whenever any outbreak occurs.
In the meantime, the World Health Organization says malaria cases and deaths remained stable last year after a worrying rise during the first year of the COVID pandemic. But in its World Malaria Report released today, the WHO warned of new challenges, including mosquito resistance to insecticides and parasite resistance to drug used to treat malaria. 95% of all malaria cases are in Africa, with children under 5 most at risk. Despite ongoing disruption to health services caused by COVID-19, malaria deaths fell last year by 6,000 to 619,000. New cases rose slightly to 247 million, a much slower rate than the previous year. The WHO says the relatively good results are due to countries strengthening their response to malaria prevention, testing, and treatment. But the increasing resistance to insecticides used in bed nets is a worrying development, as well as mosquitoes changing their habits, biting during the day outside where they can avoid bed nets. Staying with health-related matters, French President Emmanuel Macron has arrived Western France for a visit dedicated to the issue of healthcare and prevention policy. He also visited the Pictables, an initiative that aims to give young people someone to talk to about mental health issues. In 2018, Mr. Macron turned his liberalism drive to France's medical professions, vowing to lift an annual cap on the number of student doctors as part of an overhaul of the country's lauded but financially struggling healthcare system. He unveiled a series of measures, including the redeployment of 400 doctors in rural areas and the creation of 4,000 roles, such as doctors' assistants, to carry out administrative and medical tasks. In other news, the enlargement of the passport-free Schengen area to take in Romania and Bulgaria has been put in serious doubt ahead of a highly expected vote today. Austria and Netherlands continue to have concerns about admitting one or both of the countries. The opposition has been brewing for days but became patently clear after EU ambassadors met to discuss the topic. Interior ministers from the European Union are expected to decide on the long-stalled candidacy today. A unanimous endorsement is required to admit new members into Schengen and abolish checks at all internal borders. Meanwhile, Croatia's diplomatic mission to the European Union announced on Twitter that they will be joining the border check-free Schengen area from January 2023. Protesters took to the streets of Mongolia's capital for the fifth day today after the arrest of officials allegedly tied to a coal industry embezzlement scandal that has sparked public outrage. Since Sunday, thousands have marched in freezing temperatures in central Ulaanbaatar in a broad popular movement fueled by anger over corruption as well as the East Asian nation's struggling economy. Celebrities and social media influencers have joined calls for justice over claims that a so-called coal faction of lawmakers and executives had stolen billions of dollars from public coffers. Implicated lawmakers are alleged to have leveraged their ownership of coal mines and transportation companies that move the fossil fuel across the border into China to make illegal profit. The Justice Minister today announced the arrest of former Chief Executive Officer of one of the country's largest coal mining firms, along with 7 others accused of laundering money from embezzled coal. He also said camera recording from a border crossing showed customs officials failing to register some vehicles, possibly allowing coal to be exported off the books. Popular social media application TikTok has been sued by the U.S. state of Indiana. Its Attorney General Todd Rokita has accused TikTok's parent company ByteDance of violating the state consumer protection law. 2 lawsuits were filed, and the first one claims the app exposes young users to inappropriate content. In the other complaint, Mr. Rokita also alleges TikTok does not disclose the Chinese government's potential to access sensitive consumer information. The complaint also claims that the app deceives young users with age rating of 12 and above on Apple and Google App Store. To some sports stories, Luis Enrique has left his role as Spain boss after they were knocked out of the World Cup by Morocco in the last 16. The 52-year-old took charge in 2018 and guided Spain to the Euro 2020 semi-finals, where they lost to Italy. Spain under-21 coach Luis de la Fuente has been recommended for the role, but his appointment must be approved by the board, who are meeting on Monday. The Portuguese Football Federation has denied that Cristiano Ronaldo threatened to leave the World Cup. Portuguese publication Record claims the 37-year-old forward made the threat after being told he will not start their last 16 game against Switzerland. In the previous game against South Korea, the Portugal captain reacted angrily when he was substituted. Ronaldo left Manchester United by mutual agreement before Portugal's World Cup opener after a controversial interview in which the five-time Ballon d'Or winner criticized the club. Raheem Sterling is to return to Qatar before England's World Cup quarter-finals against France on Saturday. The Chelsea winger flew back to England on Sunday following a break-in at his family home in Surrey. A spokesperson for the England footballer said he left the England camp to prioritize the well-being of his 3 young children, but he is now expected to rejoin his England teammates in Al-Waqa tomorrow. And in the world of entertainment, Canadian singer Celine Dion has revealed she has been diagnosed with stiff person syndrome, a rare neurological disorder which features of an autoimmune disease. The 54-year-old told her 5.2 million Instagram followers the condition makes her muscle spasm uncontrollable. She said it has also left her with difficulties walking and singing, meaning she will be unable to play planned shows in Europe next year.
Hello, everyone. I'm sorry it's taken me so long to reach out to you. I miss you all so much. And I can't wait to be on stage talking to you in person. As you know, I've always been an open book. And I wasn't ready to say anything before. But I'm ready now. I've been dealing with problems with my health for a long time. And it's been really difficult for me to face these challenges and to talk about everything that I've been going through. Recently, I've been diagnosed with a very rare neurological disorder called stiff person syndrome, which affects something like 1 in a million people. While we're still learning about this rare condition, we now know this is what's been causing all of the spasms that I've been having.
We wish Celine Dion the very best. Before we end Spring Global, here is a recap of our top stories. Iran has announced the first execution of a protester convicted over the recent anti-government unrest. The United States and Russia have exchanged jailed U.S. basketball star Brittany Griner for notorious arms dealer Victor Bout, who was held in an American prison for 12 years. Uganda has received 1,200 experimental vaccine doses designed to work against the Sudan strain of the Ebola virus that will be used in scientific trials. Don't forget to follow us on our social media handles on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Western Spring Television. You can also watch us live and subscribe on our YouTube channel at Western Spring Television. I am Tunde Idowu. Good evening.
Bẹ́gùn bá jáde mọ̀rìnwó la kọ́kọ́ rí ọwọ́ gẹ́gẹ́ ní síwájú ìjó ẹsẹ̀ katakata ní síwájú rìn bẹ́ẹ̀ bá ti ń gbúrò wa a tún ti dé náà nù ẹ káàbọ̀ sórí ètò Owambe Unlimited pẹ̀lú èmi ọmọ yín olólùfẹ́ yín ọ̀rẹ́ yín Suliat tẹ̀túmọ̀ sí Mọ́rẹ́nikẹ́jì ẹ lè pè mí ní Sùsù tó bá wẹ̀ lómi a sọ pé ìyálòdì àríyá gbogbo orúkọ